Welcome to this topic. This topic is called classification. And in this case, we're looking at classifying plants without flowers. So let's read this together. All the millions of species or different types of living things can be sorted into groups. And sorting all these millions of different species or living things into groups is what we call classification. They are sorted into groups that have features that are in common with them. So in this particular task, we're looking at plants without flowers. So plants without flowers are sorted into the groups fungi, algae, mosses and liverworts, ferns and horsetails, and also conifers. So let's start with fungi, first of all. So they do not contain the green chemical chlorophyll, and so do not make their own food. Most feed on dead material and reproduce with tiny pores. Some examples of fungi are mushrooms. Now, there are different types of mushrooms. There are some mushrooms that we can eat, and there are some mushrooms that we can't eat, which are slightly poisonous. So mushrooms fall under the classification of fungi. Now here, chlorophyll is used for a process called photosynthesis, where the plants actually make their own food. But fungi features do not actually have the production mechanism to produce or do photosynthesis. Next one is algae. So they live in water and have no roots or leaves. They make their own food and can be green, brown, or red. So an example here of algae is seaweed. Next up is mosses and liverworts. So they have small, simple roots and leaves. They can only grow in damp places. So in other words, wet and moist places. And they reproduce with their spores. And the moss is a good example of mosses and liverworts classification. You've got a couple of diagrams there. So you've got the moss on the left, and you also have the liverwort on the right. So ferns and horsetails, they have well-developed roots and stems. They usually grow in damp, shady places, and they reproduce with their spores. So here we've got an example of a fern, what it looks like, and then we've got an example of what we call horsetails. Conifers, they are trees with tough, needle-shaped leaves. They do not have flowers and reproduce with cones. So conifer trees are very, very tall and slim. They look very similar to what we have our Christmas trees. And there's an example of just a leaf from a conifer tree and the needles that they carry here as well. So these are plants with no flowers, and the 5 major groups of classification using plants without flowers. So study this diagram again, including the pictures, and then you've got some questions that you're going to answer. And like usual, we'll follow these up in our next class. Thank you.